Welcome to Baddies for the People. I'm Rachel Pearl Jacobs.
And I'm Cheyenne Hunt.
And we're your resident baddies.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back, baddies. Cheyenne, what's the tea with you this week?
The tea with me this week is that I'm watching an alternative version of my life play out in the White House right now. And the moral of that whole story is basically if I had sold out and just been a shill for the conservatives, I would be so much more successful. And my path to the top would have gone so much easier. Basically, Trump's press secretary, Kristen Leavitt, we don't know how to say her name. She is the same age as me. We both ran for Congress at very young ages. And, you know, my path, I'm here doing this podcast. I also do other things, but I'm here doing this podcast. And she is the White House press secretary. And that's insane. She is the youngest press secretary in history. And I just can't. Like, that could have been me if I had sold out. If I was willing to be a part of my own subjugation, I could have been up there with blonde hair, because I don't think they would let me do it as a Syrian-looking woman. Yeah, basically, it really just got me thinking about how much harder the journey is on this side of the aisle. And if only I was willing to sell out, you know?
I don't like the suit that she wore in her first briefing. I'm looking at it and it wasn't giving. And frankly, oh yeah, I was Googling whether or not she went to law school.
You wanted to know if we followed really like the exact same path?
She didn't.
Okay, so I had that leg up on her and I still didn't end up in the White House. So really just goes to show you that if you are a conservative woman and you can string together an articulate sentence and you are okay being complicit in the agenda of tearing down the rights of other women, that's basically a direct ticket to the top. And unfortunately, we don't have shortcuts like that I know of.
Also, you didn't marry someone who's really old, but does he have a lot of money?
Her husband?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Well, I mean, why would she marry him? Let's find out. He's a real estate developer.
Okay, well. Also, she could, like, worth noting too, I didn't commit a bunch of federal crimes when I ran for Congress. She has $300,000 worth of illegal campaign funds in excess of what you're allowed to take from individual donors that she just never paid back. And she gets to work in the federal government.
Yeah, dude. The Trump administration is full of felons. We've established this.
So different rules for them. But I don't know. I'm fine over here. I don't have a baby, and that's so fine by me, man. I'll take my piece.
Oh, so in the early 2000s, he purchased rundown properties in Hampton Beach and flipped them.
So he has money.
Yeah. Do you think you could have sex with someone 32 years your senior?
No. And that's totally getting cut.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
It's relevant.
It's not.
It is. We have to establish if this is really, like, could be you.
I guess it couldn't be me.
Exactly. She also didn't go to law school. So I think we've established some good differences. My tea, we're not cutting it. What? It's great content, bro.
What's your tea?
I don't know. I don't remember. Hold on. My tea is that I rejoined Tinder and the plebeian population, Raya being $50 a month. And maybe I'm just cheap, but you just match with people and, like, never talk on Raya. It's really weird.
Oh, that sucks.
And I've had more, at least, conversations on Tinder, like, in the week that I've had it than I've had in the 2 months that I've had Raya. So.
Okay. So yeah, you're having more conversations, but is there, like, judging by what you've sent me, the screenshots, there is a difference in the caliber of folks that you interact with.
Oh, for sure. Like, not even just attractiveness wise, but also just elitism wise. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm on Raya because I'm an elitist. Yeah, so Raya has more attractive people and they're on the whole smarter in some way, I guess you could say.
So you sent me a screenshot of this guy on Tinder and the bio absolutely blew my mind. Can we please read it for our dear listeners?
Okay, so this is a 31-year-old male, but if you were wondering what the 30-somethings are saying now, they're either calling themselves golden retrievers or they're like this. About me, 6'7", pretty cool, kind of weird. You won't like me if you're woke. Traditional values, wild energy, ready to start a revolution. Equality ? IDK. But I do need an intelligent woman's opinion who also understand I'm in charge.
Who also understand.
Did I say that?
Yeah, that's the typo. He literally put, I need an intelligent woman who also understands.
An intelligent woman's opinion who also understand I'm in charge. LOL, looking for fun now.
Looking for fun now.
First of all, the initial red flag was his toes are out, okay? Because
well, his almost everything is out.
It's different if your toes are out. It's just a whole different, it is. It's 100% different if your toes are out. I mean, I don't care, but like everything that people put in their Tinder profiles, I feel like is very intentional.
Whoop, whoop, piggy police.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you have a mirror selfie, I'm not matching with you.
Yeah, like more effort, please.
Especially, no, a mirror selfie shirtless.
Ooh.
There's so many, like, dude.
People are still doing that?
Yes,
like adults?
Yes, so many.
Dark days. Well, that leads to my first point, which is that at a certain point, the male loneliness crisis is self-inflicted. And this feels like one of those times. We have to just talk about like some of these lines because they stand out to me. He talks about traditional values, but having wild energy. What does that mean?
It means he likes kinky sex, but he wants you to be submissive.
Whatever it was, I don't want it. Equality IDK, or is it IDK? Yeah. Equality ? IDK.
So this one raises a lot of questions for me. Are we talking about racial equality or are we talking about gender equality? Or are we talking about both? Because there's a lot of equalities that matter.
Well,
okay?
He doesn't know about them.
Well,
equality IDK ? That's
equality ? IDK.
Either way, it's crazy. I can't. It's giving me that he doesn't know how to do his own laundry or apologize properly.
I need an intelligent woman's opinion who also understands I'm in charge.
No. Not understands. Understand.
Yes, well, I can't say that grammatically incorrect over and over again.
It hurts your brain.
The first time we read it, you knew what he said. Now we're going through. I feel like no one intelligent actually makes this statement. Like, unless you feel as though you're not in charge and you have an inferiority complex.
Yeah.
If you want someone intelligent, you want someone intelligent. Some guys prefer unintelligent girls or women.
Yeah, for sure.
We should definitely have that conversation after we finish talking about this horrible Tinder.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other pod topic. I think a lot of folks can relate. Other big red flag for me was looking for fun now. First of all, like, why is it so fun now?
Right, because all he wants to do is have sex.
Equality IDK. Fun now. I can't even take it seriously. It's like such a nightmare.
So he also says that he's a self-proclaimed revolutionary. To me, that screams January 6er.
Yes.
Everything about this bio gives January 6er.
It totally does. I feel that. I also, when I see in a dating profile, I'm a revolutionary, it's giving I want to be able to say racial slurs in the workplace.
But the part that like throws me is the panties because they're tiny and like.
Yeah, so listeners at home that can't see the photo, he's curled up in a ball. The photo is from the side and he's wearing
tidy whities
that are tight. And this like whole alpha male Andrew Tate anti-woke thing. Like, you're in your little panties. Calm down. Yeah, I feel bad for you having to navigate this universe of online dating. I haven't had to do it in a long time. I'm astounded by the things you send me. I can't believe that this is real. That's good tea. Thanks for spilling it, Rachel. Sorry that you're going through this time. And now it's time for What Made You Cringe.
Cheyenne, what made you cringe this week?
What made me cringe this week was watching the Trump administration try to stop all federal aid funds. This includes Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, WIC for women, children, and babies. They were going to stop all of that in its tracks, and they're still trying to. And that's genuinely dystopian.
I thought Trump withdrew that executive order.
He did not. So they said they were withdrawing it, and then they said the next day, we're not withdrawing the order, we're just withdrawing the memo that talked about the order. So you need to ask your superiors about how this order is going to be interpreted. So they are still attempting to enact this federal funds freeze. And watching people try to justify it is even cringier. GOP reps have claimed live on CNN that kids who depend on school breakfast and school lunch programs are, quote, sponging off the government. I don't understand how you look at yourself in the mirror and go on national television and say hungry kids are taking advantage of the government.
Welcome to America, where we hate the poors.
So the freeze has been temporarily halted by the courts, but I really feel like the national media is missing the scale of what we're talking about. They are attempting to destroy WIC programs, food stamps, Section 8 housing, senior and veteran housing, elderly folks, veterans, babies. These are all people who are now at risk of going without food, without healthcare, and without housing. That's what they're trying to justify.
Well, when you're a Republican and you hate the poors, you're going to do things like this. I don't even know why people are so shocked and surprised. We knew this was coming. He literally said he was going to try to make the federal government obsolete in Project 2025. We talked about this. This is what they are doing. People are like, oh my God, I can't believe it affects me. Like,
I think I was shocked by how quickly they were willing to turn and burn their base, because we're talking about veterans who literally now can't call their suicide hotline. We're talking about you can't buy bulletproof vests for your local police department. We're talking about grandma can't get Meals on Wheels. And these are primarily populations of people that are occupying red states that voted for him. And they're all on the chopping block too. I don't know. I was surprised at how quickly he was willing to immediately burn them.
I feel like fuck the police.
Well, yeah, I knew that was coming.
Sorry. But my cringe is a continuation of yours. After Trump gets the backlash from the freezing of these funds, his press secretary decides to blame the Palestinians, saying we sent $50 million of condoms to Gaza. It just doesn't actually make any sense, except for blame the brown people, fuck the immigrants. Oh, but not if they're white or Elon Musk. Did you guys know that Elon Musk is actually was at one point working here illegally and was an illegal immigrant?
I didn't know that until you told me that, but I feel like we have to take an extra pause to talk about how insane this Gaza claim is, because first of all, she said that she was tipped off about it from Elon Musk, which is insane. Secondly, let's actually talk about that. $50 million spent on condoms. So I did some back of the envelope math. The federal government procures condoms for 5 cents a piece. If we spent $50 million on condoms, we sent 1 billion condoms to Gaza in this last year. I don't think that happened. Furthermore, there are approximately about 2 million people left in all of Gaza. They're saying we sent 500 condoms per person, including children, to Gaza? What? My favorite part about this whole Trump trying to say they sent $50 million worth of condoms to Gaza thing is, if you realize what they were actually talking about, if you skim through the USAID budget, you'll find an allocation for $50 million for contraceptives and other measures to prevent the spread of HIV in Mozambique's Gaza province. But they are too stubborn to admit that they made this stupid of a mistake.
This is why reading is fundamental.
I can't. It's also funny to me that the root of this is Elon Musk. It goes back to him telling the press secretary that he found this looking through the government budget. And of course, he's injecting this kind of bigoted nonsense into the federal government. And he's not going to be held accountable for it because guess what? He's not elected. He hasn't been appointed to anything. He's completely unaccountable. It's great.
You can't spell felon without Elon.
Is that the conspiracy?
Bruh, for real. You cannot spell felon without Elon. It's crazy. I don't know why more people haven't figured it out. This is real. All the signs are there. So once again, Elon Musk has made me cringe this week. What about you, Cheyenne? What are your vibes?
So this is the vibes where we talk about the crossover between politics, pop culture, and the law. Today, I want to talk about Selena Gomez. So she shared a video of herself on social media where the video starts and she's sobbing, like fully sobbing, and she's talking about attacks on immigrant communities. She's gotten a lot of backlash for it from folks calling the crying performative and the whole thing feels kind of fake. And then there's also people on the right who are calling for her to be deported, even though she's a US citizen. But we're just going to set that aside. That being said, I actually found her vulnerability kind of refreshing. I won't pretend like filming yourself sobbing isn't at least somewhat inherently performative. That being said, it's becoming more and more common among our generation. I don't know what that's about. It's not for me, but we listen and we don't judge. Anyway.
Maybe she did multiple takes, and by the time she'd gotten to this take, she was already crying really hard.
That's actually low-key probably true.
Yeah.
It's very believable to me. Because, and like,
it's hard to talk about.
It's hard to talk about. Yeah. It's heavy. For as much hate as she got about it being performative, it did seem to have a real impact. Google searches for immigrant rights skyrocketed after she posted that video, and she's one of the most followed people on Instagram. So her showing a little bit of humanity might have actually made a difference.
She is?
She is, yeah. She, for a long time, was the most followed person on Instagram. Also, to your point, I don't think that crying is unwarranted. Trump's first term was restrained compared to what we're about to see. And even with that restraint, this was the administration that instituted family separation and put kids in cages and kept records so horribly that over 1,300 children have never been reunited with their families after that. And now they're taking the gloves off. If they're willing to stop aid for starving children in our country, imagine what they're willing to do to kids that they don't see as human. So yeah, I would cry too.
Yeah, but they've never seen the poor as human.
It's not just the poor, though. This is like a separate thing. This is racism.
Oh, yes, I would actually say it's nationalism. There's an aspect of racism in it, but it's the idea that their nation is inferior as well.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a mistake that he's primarily targeting Hispanic people.
Actually, he's targeting Black people too, like 1,000 Liberians.
Yeah, and Haitians too. It's about to get a lot darker too. Trump just said that he wants Guantanamo Bay to prepare to receive 30,000 migrant detainees. Yes, Guantanamo Bay, the war prison founded during the Bush administration to receive suspected terrorists, where they are infamously known to be subjected to torture and indefinite detention. That's where they want to send people seeking a better life.
But what is the point of that? Like, if they're actually contributing to our economy, what's the point of putting them in Guantanamo Bay for some unspecified period of time?
Because they don't care that they're contributing to the economy. That's why they're deporting them. That doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to them that they pay a shitload in taxes.
Yeah, but they're not deporting them if they're sending them to Guantanamo Bay. It's not an immediate deportation.
No, it's not.
The misconception, right? So there's this whole like period of holding because they've, issued a state of emergency. There is no rule of law in the way that we understand it.
To me, and there's been criticism of people who have said this, but I don't think that this is sensationalizing it. You're right. It is weird to prepare to detain 30,000 people in a war camp and not just deport them unless your intent is to have something that functions akin to a concentration camp.
Yes. And remember that concentration camps, before they became death camps, were involuntary labor camps. So this is just another iteration of prison labor. And what's interesting is, I don't know if people remember that Biden passed that executive order so that private prisons couldn't, like, the government was taking the federal government wasn't taking any more contracts with private prisons. I wonder if that falls under something that Trump rescinded.
He did rescind that. I saw that.
So we now have the ability to profit off of migrant labor, and it's undocumented. They could effectively like disappear these people and they could enslave that whole population, and they're undocumented. So they'd just be disappearing without a trace.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's also about to get a lot worse. I know I've said that already, but just to pile on, thanks to the passage of the Lakeland-Riley Act, you now can be detained for not only being convicted, not only being charged, but simply being accused of committing a crime, including misdemeanor petty theft. And there are Democrats who voted for this bill, but let's actually think about what that means. That means there are children who could be sent to Guantanamo Bay, where we waterboard people because anyone can accuse them of stealing a candy bar. That's what we're talking about right now. And to the Democrats who voted for it, I hope that you can't sleep at night. So I guess all of that is to say it's heavy and things are dark, and it makes sense that if you were going to talk about it and you felt so moved, you might cry. And so, I don't know, I guess I'm refreshed by Selena Gomez being emotionally vulnerable in the way that she talked about it. And I get it. So those are my vibes. Rachel, what are you vibing off of this week?
This week on You're a Messy Bitch, we have Carla Sofia Gascon. Now, Miss Gascon has recently come into public spotlight for being the first openly trans woman to receive an Oscar nomination. But despite what all you think about Holly Weird, you can still be a part of the LGBT community and also be a bigot.
Yeah, and apparently a really rampant bigot on Twitter.
Yeah, she hates the blacks. She hates the Islamophobes. Nope.
She is an Islamophobe.
She hates the blacks. She's an Islamophobe. And
she hates vaccines. She took shots at Selena Gomez.
She's actually your quintessential right-wing nut job. And
I get it. It's giving Caitlyn Jenner.
I knew you were going to say that.
I really don't like her, so I have to bring it up.
But do you see how we criticize people without misgendering them?
No place for that in this conversation.
No place for that in this world. You can dislike someone and still be respectful, even if they are probably Trump voters, aka trash.
Yikes. That's a hot take. Well, I guess it's really not, actually. I like to be nice to people.
I am nice.
As you call people trash. Iconic. Okay, well.
Your decisions are trash. And through the vicarious property, you are trash if you voted for Trump. I'm sorry. Throw yourself away.
Those were the vibes. And now, dear listener, it's time for the deep dive. What if I told you that the LA fires weren't just a natural disaster, but a man-made crisis potentially made worse by corporate greed?
I wouldn't be surprised.
While flames tore through neighborhoods, dozens of fire trucks sat collecting dust in maintenance yards. Let's talk about how corporate vultures are routinely putting profits over public safety.
So this antitrust lawyer named Basil Musharbash posted this article on Substack, and it was called, "Did a Private Equity Fire Truck Roll Up Worsen the LA Fires?" That's a mouthful, but it's actually really interesting.
He cites an interview with LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley, where she talks about there being over 100 fire apparatuses in states of disrepair. This is pretty serious, and we don't know how many of those are actually of the 183 total fire trucks. The distinction between apparatus and truck is not entirely clear. However, there was a viral photo of this maintenance yard that showed a whole lot of their trucks broken down and out of use. You know, we don't want to speculate here, and we can't be clear clear exactly how much this impacted the destruction of these fires. There were so many other variables at play here. We're talking about record-breaking winds, budget cuts to the LAFD, which impacted not only potentially their ability to acquire new vehicles, but also to have repairmen on site and on employ to be able to fix these things. All in all, we do know that the fire chief herself said that having these apparatuses in a state of disrepair was a problem. And had they been working, it very well may have enhanced their ability to address these fires.
So wait, what does private equity have to do with fire trucks?
Well, to get there, we have to at least start by talking about what private equity is. So private equity firms, which are colloquially referred to as an industry as private equity, are firms that are basically just pools of money and partners and managers that invest that money in private companies. So these are companies that are not traded on the stock market. These are often companies that you've never heard of, but that you're interacting with in your daily life. We're talking about healthcare, pharmaceuticals, insurance, apartments, fast food. You name it, at some point in the last month, you've probably interacted with private equity.
So what private equity is the boring part.
Yeah.
The juicy part is about how they make money.
Exactly. So the whole model is they buy supposedly beleaguered, bad, failing companies and then flip them and sell them at a later date, or they take them public through a public offering. Think about people who flip houses. We're talking about someone that's going to come in and buy a broken down old house, put millennial gray vinyl flooring in, do the landlord special on the paint, and flip it for 50 grand more than they bought it for, when really it's the same house with a few little bells and whistles attached. That's what private equity is mostly doing for companies. There are a few success stories where they were able to come in and really make it efficient and rework the business model. But for the most part, what we're talking about is they're looking for quote unquote diamonds in the rough, but really they're buying companies, oftentimes stripping them for parts, selling everything that's valuable about them, and leaving behind a shell of a company that's strapped with debt and most likely is going to struggle to move on.
They're not just weeding out the weaklings of the pack. Companies don't have to be doing poorly to be acquired. In 2007, Carlyle Group, which is one of the nation's largest private equity firms, they manage $400 billion. They acquired this place called Manor Care, which is the second largest nursing home chain in the country, for $6.1 billion plus fees.
And this is an example I really want to highlight as someone that's had multiple close family members go into nursing homes in recent years. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out why they were all awful and understaffed and why it felt like people were going there basically to die. And now after this deep dive, I feel really confident in telling you exactly why that's happening. That's the business model now. So when we're talking about Manor Care, we're talking about a company that was doing great, gets acquired. When they were acquired, they owned all of the facilities that they had all of these patients in. Well, Carlyle Group had them sell almost 2/3 of those properties and start leasing them back. So now they're paying rent on property that they used to own
for $40 million a month. And of course, there's no way that this company was able to pay the $40 million a month for the lease. So they started cutbacks. And of course, when you start cutbacks, the first thing you cut is your employees.
Yeah,
because that makes sense. So they laid off hundreds of their employees. And at the same time, they started the good old government scheme. So a little tea, 75% of Manor Care patients were on Medicare or private pay. To make life easier, or maybe I should say more profitable for Manor Care, they started overcharging Medicare.
So patients that needed, normal, fewer amounts of therapies suddenly were receiving 4, 5, 6 different kinds of therapy, physical therapy, things that were inappropriate for 85-year-old patients that were basically on their deathbed or getting forced out of bed to do physical therapy so they could pay or get paid from Medicare.
But the most appalling thing that happened with all this is the human toll that it took on patient care. So in 2018, the Washington Post conducted an investigation and it found that there was a 26% rise in health code violations at manor care facilities between 2013 and 2017.
It's also worth noting that this is an industry that private equity has their hooks in. It's not just manor care. It's all over the nursing home industry. And studies have found that you are 10% more likely to die if you are at a private equity owned nursing home.
So to personalize this, I'm going to read you a story. At a manor care facility in Illinois, an 84-year-old man was receiving physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech-language pathology services. But after a month, his condition began to decline, the government found. The patient hurt all over and felt tired all the time and was not progressing in his therapy, prosecutors said. Still, he was forced to endure excessive therapy treatment and qualify for ultra-high Medicare billing. One day, the resident had difficulty breathing and was verbally non-responsive. His physician had ordered him only palliative care and comfort treatment, but Manor Care insisted on putting him into group therapy. Less than a week later, Manor Care again tried to force therapy sessions on the patient. He died that day.
Yeah. This is exactly, and I'm sure there are so many other stories that are just like that. And that is the private equity model. You juice these companies for everything that they have. It becomes completely a model of profit over people.
So, long story short, private equity won't save you. Manor Care filed for bankruptcy in 2017.
This wasn't Growing Pains.
And it stayed broke.
This was a company that was doomed from the time that private equity got its hooks into it.
That same year, the Carlyle Group reported in their filings a profit in excess of $1 billion.
So apologies if that felt like a huge digression, but I do think it illustrates the point that private equity is absolutely comfortable ruining public goods and making us pay the price and taxpayers pay the price. And if you're wondering how the hell does this connect to the LA fires, I'll tell you. In 2008, a private equity firm called American Industrial Partners decided that they wanted to get involved in the fire truck industry. They started by acquiring E1 for $20 million and then went on a purchasing spree and bought several more of these independently owned fire truck manufacturing companies. By the time it was all said and done, they had 1/3 of the market with 33%, with two other companies being the only players. We were in an oligopoly. Essentially, it's a monopoly, but instead of just one, it was a handful of players. That meant they were able to fix prices and control the marketplace, really holding local fire departments hostage to their demands.
So that means that the cost of fire trucks skyrocketed in recent years, going from around $300,000 to $500,000 for a pumper truck and $750,000 to $900,000 for a ladder truck in the mid 2010s to around $1 million for a pumper truck and $2 million for a ladder truck in the last couple of years. So for those of you that are curious, that means these fire truck prices increased at 3 times the rate of inflation. Meanwhile, minimum wage, not so much.
Facts.
The other important fact is that now there's approximately a 4-year wait for these fire trucks getting repaired.
It used to be about 1, maybe 1.5 years. Can you imagine, like, your local government is looking at their fire preparedness and they realize that they cannot adequately serve the community right now because they need another fire truck. And you have to wait 4 years?
Well, it really makes it so that the raggedy old need to retire fire trucks are still stuck.
After acquiring all these fire truck manufacturers, they rolled them into a conglomerate called REV Group. And it wasn't just fire trucks. They also had purchased ambulances and other vehicles of the sort. But essentially, they gave up the illusion that these were all separate companies. They started colluding, having them all price fix and operate as if they were one company. This is dangerous if you don't understand, because it ends up removing competition from the marketplace and leaving buyers with a single choice, left to the whims of those companies with all the power. And we saw that play out in really scary ways. We talked earlier when we were talking about Manor Care about the way that private equity is really solely a vehicle to benefit shareholders. and the people involved in these private equity firms, and that stakeholders often are the ones to bear the cost. Consumers have higher prices, employees get absolutely screwed when they're either laid off or offered lower wages. The companies themselves are usually left as a shell of what they were before the acquisition. That was not dissimilar from what we saw happen in this case. We saw plant closures. Even though the demand for fire trucks is at astronomically high rates, they're closing factories, they're firing workers, and they're making record profits, all the while ensuring that their product is just harder to get and they can charge more for it.
So, did you ever explain the difference between stakeholders and shareholders?
That's a good point. So, essentially, scholars have talked about the idea that there are two different theories to capitalism. We live in a shareholder capitalist system right now, wherein the primary value that the capitalist market is striving to create is a return on investment for shareholders, people who have invested in, hold stock in the company. And the rest of us pay the price for that. Consumers, the environment, employees.
Those are stakeholders.
So there's an alternative model, which is stakeholder capitalism, which says companies have a responsibility to take into account the whole picture, not just value for shareholders and profitability, but also the well-being of the consumers, the earth, society as a whole, and that responsibility is actually the guiding principle behind the market. And I think that that's something that private equity clearly does not aspire to.
Well, duh. We all want more money. This is why the only way to create real change is to be an oligarch's wife, because then you can donate all of the profits that would be written off of taxes that other people pump into foundations and just like use on frivolous things to actually help the poor.
I don't even know what's happening right now. Okay, I love it. We always have to get that in here. I really think that you're using our podcast primarily as a platform to shop for a single oligarch.
Correct! What do you mean? What?
Would you be a private equity oligarch's wife? Because some of these people are the most wealthy people in the world.
I have no boundaries when it comes to how horrible of an industry that my future partner can be in.
Wow.
Like, be an oil tycoon. That's cool.
Damn, that's crazy.
Dude, whatever. Okay, look, unless you're willing to literally eat, sleep, and breathe with the wealthiest, you're never going to be able to utilize their resources for your own good, which luckily for all of you is the good of the collective.
But the thing is that once you eat, sleep, breathe it, you start to believe it, and all of a sudden you're a shareholder capitalist and you've forgotten about the stakeholders.
Absolutely not. Did Melinda Gates forget about the stakeholders?
I don't know, maybe. There's a lot of criticisms of the Gates Foundation.
I'm sorry.
But that's a whole other deep dive.
Wait, did Mackenzie Bezos forget about the stakeholder population? I think not.
She's a rare, rare breed.
And so am I.
Oh my God. Okay. Back to fire trucks and why you shouldn't be the oligarch's wife of a private equity oligarch. Essentially, their business model has become trading public safety for profit. What we're talking about right now, what I am about to reveal to you, is one of the things that is the most disturbing about this whole fire truck debacle, which is we talked earlier about how there's a huge waiting list for these trucks. Used to be a year, now it's up to 4.5 years. Well, it turns out that that's no accident. That's baked into their business models. Specifically, here is what one of these executives said at a Rev shareholders meeting. Finally, certainty of our business can carry a relative long duration backlog, which enables strong visibility into the future net sales, which generally range from 6 to 24 months, depending on the product in the market. Where this backlog visibility exists, we are able to more efficiently plan and predict our sales and production activity. In plain speak, shareholders like to be able to see in the future, and this industry backlog allows them to basically guarantee to their shareholders that there will be profitability in the months to come. So they don't really give a shit if your house burns down while your local fire department is waiting for a truck. They don't give a shit if there's a massive wildfire because we're all going to die in a climate crisis. They don't care because the shareholders have certainty for up to 26 months.
Well, It sounds like they're set for years to come.
But we're not.
We never were going to be. This is the oligopoly. Remember, you can't buy private equity. This is for people who already have money to be able to have more money. And that's what this hyper-capitalist society is actually about. The little teeny percent of the ultra wealthy having more money. Now, if I was the ultra wealthy, I would give a lot of it away. And that's the thing. They have so much that they can literally have their families be taken care of for longer than this planet's going to survive with the way global warming is right now.
And that's a whole other point that you just sparked in my brain, which is the ultra wealthy don't give a shit about fire trucks because they hire private firefighters. They don't care about your municipal fire department. That was a whole other thing with the LA fires, is that there's so many private fire departments and fire trucks for the ultra wealthy. So they really don't give a shit if your stuff burns down.
Well, that's not totally true, because remember that billionaire who used his private fire fleet to, make sure that the Palisades shopping center didn't burn down? That was a community benefit.
Save the hub of capitalism. Okay.
I'm joking. Don't take me seriously, people.
Well, if you want to know how that story ended for American Industrial Partners, remember the private equity firm that bought all of these companies? They sold Rev Group, which contained all of the fire truck companies, for $700 million. So they're fine while LA burns.
Let it burn.
Not Usher.
Yeah, bruh. That's what they're thinking when...
when LA's on fire.
Yeah, when LA's on fire. The private equity companies are like, and then they literally could play the Let It Burn music. And yeah. Well, that was the deepest depth of diving we've ever dove. And it's time for rent free. There should be like ching, 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 ching. Like there should be like money falling.
That you can pay to your landlord that probably is private equity.
Listen, I'm just saying, for sound effects and for the transition, money falling, like lottery machines dinging. Mm-hmm.
Rent free.
What's living rent free in my head is that the Republicans are creating their new brand of DEI, KKK, and the transportation secretary is leading the way on this. Trump's transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, sent out a memo directing staff to give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average. What? So, for those of you who don't know, disproportionately, marriage rates are the lowest amongst African Americans and the highest amongst whites. But the births part is confusing because all know.
They're the ones constantly complaining that the immigrants are having too many babies.
I know. So, once again, it makes no sense. But shout out to Republicans for strongly embracing that KKK that they used to so subtly hide.
It's clear what they're trying to do. Like, it's Christian nationalism. They're giving priority to people who are married and have a bunch of babies. That's their subtle way of trying to incorporate that into the government.
Oh, the quiverful. We're incorporating the quiverful into the government. Yikes.
It's a weird precedent. And it is, I'm glad you brought it up because not a lot of people are talking about it. And like, what's next? We're going to give tax breaks to people who are going to the right church. We're going to give tuition breaks to kids whose parents are still married. I could totally see them doing that.
Right now, we are dabbing white tears. That is all this policy is. But keep crying because you're still incompetent.
It's also DEI. Like, they're talking about how we need to hire the best and the brightest. We need to prioritize the best and the brightest. You're talking about giving funding primarily to a group of people that is a certain ethnic group.
Well, as we know, white is right. So, Cheyenne, what's been living rent-free in your head?
That is going to live rent-free in my head, unfortunately. And the fact that that's going to be seen and heard. No,
white is right.
Once was enough, I think. Mine's so stupid. And you know what? We had an intellectually heavy episode. So I don't care. I'm rolling with it. It's literally the definition of living rent-free in my head because I can't stop thinking about it. I saw someone post that the perfect person to play Gavin Newsom in a film or a biopic would be Will Arnett. And I cannot unsee it. In his like super slicked back hair moment, think like the BoJack Horseman voice, and like very just like he gets that slimy, like way too polished, kind of better than you vibe. I feel like it's totally giving Gavin Newsom. And now I keep thinking about like, what movie are they going to make about Gavin Newsom so that we can cast Will Arnett? Like, who can I convince to make a movie about him having a party at the French Laundry during COVID lockdown? Or honestly, you know what movie I do want to see because I need to know more about this? I want to see the movie about how the hell he ended up married to Kimberly Guilfoyle and what unfolded in the process of her somehow not being married to him anymore and then going to be with Don Jr. I need to know, and I need Will Arnett to take me on that journey. That's what's living in my head rent free.
With bad veneers?
Who has bad veneers, Will Arnett or Gavin Newsom?
Gavin Newsom.
Does he really? I'm really bad at like.
Did you not notice?
I'm really bad at.
He has bad veneers, right? I have no idea. Maybe they're his real teeth.
I don't know.
Yikes.
I'm really bad at like noticing if people have bad veneers. I have to like. They have to be really bad for me to notice. They have to almost look like a mono tooth. So yeah, maybe Gavin Newsom has glow in the dark veneers and they're gonna have to stick those on Will Arnett. Did you know that he was married to Amy Poehler? First we talked about private equity. Now we're talking about the pop culture total Delulu land shit that lives in my head rent free. That's what this segment is. It's garbage. This is the dumpster fire segment. Let me have it. Okay? Did you ever figure out if he has fucking veneers?
Apparently they're his.
Oh, they are his. Are we surprised that Gavin Newsom takes great care of his teeth? Of course he does. It's a very Gavin Newsom thing to do. You know what else he does? He domineers over Donald Trump. That friggin' picture of Trump getting off the plane to see, did you see that? When Trump came to California to see the Palisades fire disaster site?
He was giving very demure.
And Gavin Newsom was like, sorry, listeners, you don't know what I just did. He was like standing over him and like, absolutely, his body language was giving, I am your daddy.
Yeah. You need to describe what you just did for the record. The judge always says that when the lawyers have people pointing and doing stuff. They're like, well, this person is facing southwest and they're raising their hand from a left to right diagonal.
They're pointing down.
Bruh, what? Ridiculous. Okay. Are we done?
So yeah, that was my rent-free rabbit hole. Thanks for going down it with me. Sorry, it was, garbage, but that's what lives in my head rent-free sometimes. You get it. And with that,
this episode is over. Send it.
This was Baddies for the people. And we're going to see you next week. Stay bad.